So you started with swimwear, but there's also bridal, and then I've seen some interior design. So when you're first starting out, how did you really think about where to focus? Because we get this question all the time. People are like, I have so many ideas. I'm a multi-hyphenate. I just learned what that word meant like last week, right? So like, how did you decide that, okay, for me, when I'm first starting out, I'm going to start with this one versus the other things? What were some of the things that you were evaluating when you were figuring out where you wanted to start?
Well, I think that for the most part, when I was starting, the one thing I knew I wanted to do was make African fashion or African inspired fashion to be accessible worldwide. So when you're thinking about a culture, you think about the clothing, you think about the lifestyle, you think about the interior. But because fashion was something I started with, I actually started with bridal wear, not swimwear. A lot of people think it's swimwear, but I started with
Mm.
bridal wear. And with bridal wear, it was something that I was making by myself, and I just made a few pieces here and there. Then I just kept adding on. I think people think that it has to be starting everything at the same time. It doesn't have to be that. You just start first of all, and then you just start like you just start. You can't just think that you have to do everything together. You just start adding on and adding on. So we did, the bridal, and then it was the couture, and then we added the swimwear, and then we added, the cover ups, and then it's always been a trial and error. A lot of the big brands you see, it's really just trying out. No one really has the answer as to what's going to work out, but it's that's what business is about. You take the risk, and you're okay with it failing, but you don't let it fail. That's kind of the idea.
I think that's so important because a lot of people have wonderful ideas, but they're stuck in that part of just getting started. They're stuck
Yeah.
in, okay, well, where am I going to find my first customers? So for
Mhm.
you, when you first started with the bridal wear, who were your first customers? Were they your friends? Were they family? Was it social media? How did you really think about, okay, I need to find the first set of people who are going to buy something from me?
So I think that a lot of times, well, I guess when I was starting my business, it was not very much about the customers. It was about just starting. That's what I really mean. So I mean, obviously starting a business as an older person, I was 17. So I did have room to try and just have fun with it. But I mean, I'd imagine that if you're a bit older, you would kind of want to know what you're doing and who your customer is. I think a lot of research is important, and you have to find like brands, not to imitate those brands, but the idea of what you're trying to kind of do, see who their customers are, and if you're able to, if you're able to cater to that customer base. So when I started, it wasn't really like I had profiled this customer and I was going to do exactly what she wanted. It was my customer kind of came to me as I went on. And then as the business grew, then we started speaking to this customer because she had now been developed, and she's constantly developing. So I think the thing about it is that because as people, we're constantly changing what we like or don't like. I mean, we have our general likes, but people are very fragile in their likes and trends. So you need to make sure that what inspires you is not really a customer base, but it's really the core of your brand, which is you and your story and what you're trying to do. And then the customer is kind of like secondary, like they complement what you do. So the first thing is really getting the roots and the core of your brand, and then you start to find that customer base and then grow off of that. Yeah.
I love that advice because that's a bit countercultural to what we hear. It's a
Mhm.
bit different than what we hear a lot of places. But I think that as creatives, your core has to be strong and you
Mhm.
have to really get that creativity from somewhere, because I'm always looking at your designs. I'm like, I would have never thought to cut it here, slice it here, turn it up, right? You have to be connected to who you are and to get that creativity. And so if you are just following trends, that's a different kind of business
Yeah,
as
it
opposed
is.
to really being a designer and trying to be a creative. So where does that inspiration come from for you? Because, and can you walk us through what it means to come up with a collection? Like to
Um,
have this idea and then turn it into reality.
well, I think inspiration is really, it's internal, right? So it could come from your environment, your spirit level, your dreams, it's really, it could be from the political movement, it could be social. Inspiration comes from anywhere. For any human being is inspired by something. So for me, I'm a traveler, so I do love to travel. So I do find that AI is very about nature and, really being okay with being an adventurer, both in your physical space and in your style. So it's one of those things where I pick up, something as simple as a leaf could turn into a top, something as simple as, the colors of the water could turn into the prints so it's really just picking up from nature and our environment is really what inspires the clothes, which is why a lot of times the colors are very synonymous with what we see around us. So nature is definitely a very big, very, very big part of our design process. And with developing a collection is a lot of work when you become a business. I mean, it's also still a lot of work when you're just starting out. But as a business, it's a bit different. I'm going to say that things are a bit more structured than when I first started. When I first started, I could just think about something, make a nice, nothing was controlling anything. I didn't have any big customer base. I was just having fun with it. And that's why I tell people when they're starting out, you're just having fun with it, obviously with intention, but you're testing, you're trying. You literally have the luxury to try things out. And you have to be okay with, if this is not going to work out, you're not doing it so you can blow or so it can trend. Most things that trend usually don't intend to trend. It just kind of happens. So I always tell people, don't try and chase a hype, especially in the beginning. Just do what you love and what you like and what you feel is beautiful. And then it just kind of, picks up on that. So collections, right now, we still follow the same model where there's an inspiration and then we do research on that inspiration. And from there, the designers kind of all work. It's a bit deeper now. So if I said, I wanted to do something about Egypt, which was like our 2016 collection, before I would just go to Egypt and do whatever I wanted. But I was like, okay, I need to make sure that there's no cultural appropriation. And, you need to be responsible as a company. So it's a bit different as a company creating a collection. It takes a while as well. We work in collections usually about at least 6 to 8 months before you actually see it. So right now we're already working on spring summer 22. So that it's like way ahead before you see it, because we need enough time to, trial and error, okay, is this working out? Does this cut make sense? etc.
Yeah, one thing that I really like that you said is about when you're first starting out, you have the luxury of testing and trying something. And I think that that's so important, is that not only are you trying something, but you're paying attention to the results. So don't spend all this time trying to do something, but then you don't even check to see if it works. So we're trying, we're looking at the results, and we're learning from that experience. Now, speaking of learning, something that we hear a lot of people say is that it's really challenging to find good people to work with. And you mentioned that now as a company, you have a team of designers, you have a team that's helping to put together a collection. Can you talk us through a little bit about what your process was like with building out your team and teaching them how to work together collectively? And we hear all the complaints. People aren't consistent. They're not reliable. They're not trustworthy, especially in the fashion industry. So how did you navigate that learning and that teaching process within your team?
So I think the first thing is that fashion, like every other business, is kind of the same. I always tell people that even if I was selling whatever you're selling is a product. And a product is not just about its design, it's the marketing, it's the logistics, it's the customer service. So the honest truth is, as much as I'm known as a designer, I'm literally designing it's like 10% of my time that I ever design. 90 or 80%, 80 to 90% is really business management. So I think a lot of designers think that it's about getting designers that makes it successful, or it's about getting multiple versions of themselves that makes it successful. So the first thing is that no one's going to love your job or your business as much as you do. It's something you're going to have to accept. So that's the first thing. I think a lot of times you want to see that same energy in someone else that you have. It's your company. So if you're not taking your business as seriously, the people around you are not going to take it. Your employees literally take it as seriously as you do. So I think the first thing to do is work on yourself and your commitment to what you're doing before you even think about a team. Because a lot of people think about a team and forget that the work is really going to start from you.
Yes.
That's the first thing. Your team would literally feed off the energy that you have. And if it's a weak link in the team, they're just not going to survive there. And that's fine. I feel like when people get frustrated that incompetent people leave or are causing problems for them, to me, that's a good thing, because that's quick for me to know that you're not part of the vision. So you need to, move to the side and you focus on what you really need. A lot of times I think that you need to understand that a fashion business is a business. I know that seems so literal, but it really is. You do need a management person. You do need your accountant. You need people that don't even know anything about fashion. The problem is you keep trying to hire every department to know about fashion, and that's not the case. Your accountant is looking at it as the numbers. That's numbers person. They don't care what the campaign looks like or who the model is. They just care about the cost, the money in, money out. And that's the part of the business that will keep your business running. It's not about how amazing your model was, unfortunately, but it's really a business. And your customer service, your logistics, the real groundwork of fashion is that there's so many moving parts and you simply cannot focus on design. So I would advise people that if you're good at one thing, be okay delegating the other side. A lot of designers are good with creativity and not that great with business. Some of them are good with business, but they're not really sure how the creative would work. So you need to, first of all, if you're new, you obviously don't have so much money to hire the best in terms of skill set. So you need to be okay with internship systems, volunteers, asking people around you. You cannot have pride as a business owner. It's just not going to work. You need to be okay asking, and you need to be okay people potentially saying no. So it's not, my father always used to have this thing where he would say, the worst thing that can happen when you ask is no. That's it. So people tend to think that it's something bigger that could happen, but it's really just a no. And then you're not always going to get a no. Something would be a yes. So be okay asking people around you. That's how I started. I surrounded myself with people that were like minds. If someone was a photographer, hey, can you help me take a couple of pictures? Oh, my normal rate is this. Well, I don't have that money. If we can work together, I'd really appreciate it. It's a no or a yes. And if it's a no, you move on. If it's a yes, yay. So some things are not as complicated or as big in the beginning as people think. It's really just teamwork, volunteering, networking, being okay to speak to people about what you're doing. I find that there's this thing where, oh, don't tell people about your ideas or what you're working because they'll steal it. I'm like, that's funny, because there's nothing like stealing an idea, because the honest truth is that execution is really what makes ideas, not the idea. So I can decide that I want to start a clothing line, and you might wake up tomorrow and say, hey, me too, I want to do a clothing line. But there's Zara, and then there's Gucci, and then there's Prada, and then there's Forever 21. They're all different kind of brands. So you need to understand that fashion is probably more about brand than product. We all know we have enough clothes in our closet, but we still keep buying from different brands, and we have those reasons why. So yeah, your team really is a lot of moving parts. You need to look at all the departments and put in a lot of energy, probably more into the other sides than product. Product is like the little seed, but the operations is what keeps your sales going, keeps people coming back, etc. Yeah.